Good afternoon and welcome to the annual general meeting of the company. My name is Richard Dover. I am chairman of the board of directors. It is now noon, and so the appointed time for the AGM has arrived. First, I'd like to introduce my fellow board colleagues, Richard Wilson, Anne Beresford and Nita Patel, whom you should be able to see on screen. And I would just like to thank them for all the diligence and enthusiasm of the contribution that they make on your behalf. Also present here today is Will Fraser-Allen, Managing Partner of Albion Capital, the company's investment manager, and he's going to be giving a presentation on the results of the company for the year ended for 31st of March 2023. The quorum for the AGM is 2 members entitled to vote in person or by proxy, and this has been met, so I therefore declare this meeting open. The notice of the meeting has been in your hands for the statutory period, so I will take the notice as read. Due to the success of last year's virtual meeting and really in order to maximise the engagement of all members, the board have again acquired the services of Lumi to broadcast this year's AGM. And members are able to participate fully in the meeting, which includes voting on the board's presentation, the board's proposed resolutions, and also, of course, on the question and answer session. The resolutions will all be voted on by way of a poll, which follows how the company conducted the process last year. The votes received under the poll will be added to the proxy votes that have already been received and verified by the registrar Computershare. If you've already completed and submitted a proxy vote, you don't need to vote again on the poll unless you wish to change your vote. So I now declare the poll open. The list of resolutions will automatically appear on your screen, and you have 3 options for each resolution. You can vote in favour, you can vote against, or you can withhold your vote. So please select the option that corresponds with how you wish to vote. Once you've selected your vote, the option will change colour and a confirmation message will appear to indicate that your vote has been cast and received. To vote on all resolutions displayed, select the Vote All option at the top of the screen. And if you want to change your vote, then reselect your choice. Now, moving to the main business of the meeting, following the manager's presentation, the director and the manager are happy to answer questions from members about the presentation or the proposed AGM resolutions as time permits. If you want to ask questions, please select the messaging icon from within the navigation bar and type your question at the top of the screen. To submit your questions, just click on the arrow on the right of the text box. So I'd now like to hand over to Will Fraser-Allen for his presentation. Will.
Richard, thank you very much indeed, and a big welcome to all the shareholders who've joined us virtually today. My presentation is going to go through the results for this VCT for the year to 31st of March 2023. And if we go to the next slide, I'll just run through the sort of core areas I want to cover, which, as you'd expect, we'll be looking at the performance in the year, some of the investment and exit activities, and just reminding us of all what our investment strategy is and how that interacts with the board's desire that we have a well thought through ESG strategy for this fund. We have just announced to the market the Q1 NAV. So as a final slide, I will give you update you all on that and talk a little bit about how things may unfold going forward, and talk about the shareholder events that you can get involved in. So if we move to the next slide, the year was somewhat muted compared to earlier years, very much reflecting the world in which we live, where we continue to see high inflation, we continue to see high interest, and the sort of broader geopolitical situation is getting no easier. This has inevitably impacted on the sentiment, particularly of customers of some of our guys. Having said that, we still managed to deliver a positive return for the year of 0.3% just, which it is, however, acknowledged that is behind our target of at least covering our 5% dividend. Dividends paid out 2.65p, and we now have a net asset value just over 50p and a total return of just over 242 pence. If we move to the next slide, I'll sort of break that down into what the environment has been. Very much as I've sort of spoken about, we are still impacted by the difficult world. I think a key observation is that in an environment like that, M&A activity, so the ability to exit our business, does become more difficult as enterprises step back from acquiring assets. We've seen this before, and as we go through the cycle, but I am expecting that to continue for a bit. What we want to do now is very much continue doing what we do, which is focusing on those mission critical products and services, which in turn should be more resilient. Next slide, please. So looking at the performance over various periods, encouraging over sort of looking at a 10-year period, we at just over 59%, we've averaged more ahead of our 5% target. And I think with venture capital, it is important to maintain that long-term lens when you consider performance. Venture portfolios will go through periods of volatility, but it is very much a long-term asset class. So if we move to the next slide, we can sort of drill down in a bit more detail of what's happened in the year. In terms of fundraising, relatively similar levels of fundraising, as shareholders will know, we very much raise what we believe the fund requires. Against that, we have had very little in the way of exits. We did have a very active investment program and to invest into 13 new companies, total investment being just under 9.5 million. So that was encouraging. That's allowed us to bring lots of new potentially new potential into the portfolio. But it does mean that if you look at the technology and healthcare element of this company's portfolio, we do have a relatively immature portfolio. But what we do, or effectively doing, is sowing the acorns that will become the mighty oaks of the future. Share buybacks down a little bit, but as not vastly dissimilar. Dividends very in line with our 5% of around 5% NAV target. Just by way of reminder, the reason the number is so high in 2022 was we paid out a substantial special dividend when the company sold its care homes, which is very much in line with the strategy of the company moving from its asset-based historic investment strategy to a strategy focused in line with the HMRC and Treasury requirements of the VCT to invest in young, innovative companies. Next slide, please. The positive contributions, amongst others, came from Solidators, which is selling into some of the large banks. Q Green is our long-held hotel at Stansted Airport, which saw a dramatic reversal of its fortunes as trading returned to pre-pandemic level, as you can imagine. Being at an airport, it had a particularly difficult time during the pandemic, but that has reversed. It's now trading decently strongly, which is good news. And then we've had some tougher trading in New Motif and Elliptic, which is in line with the sort of slower growth that we're experiencing as enterprises take more time to make decisions around buying software. And then number of ups and downs elsewhere. They're fully detailed in the P&L, and I've picked out a few of the sort of ones both up and down. If we go to the next slide and look at the portfolio, you'll be familiar with this. We're sort of over time tracking how the portfolio moves by sector. On the left-hand side, we look at the whole NAV, so that includes cash, whereas on the right, we exclude cash if we want to look specifically at invested capital as opposed to total capital, if you like. And what you're seeing is that cash coming down, and we had a particular high cash level because of the care home sales. That's now coming down, and you're seeing that reinvested into areas like healthcare, including digital healthcare, and then software, including fintech. As a result, the renewable energy concentration comes down. But if you look at it in the whole portfolio, there's still 22% of the invested portfolio is in renewables. So very much sort of moving towards the sort of the new strategy, which we'll see more invested in healthcare and software in particular. Next slide, please. Looking at the portfolio, just getting a sense of how the portfolio is positioned in terms of the stage of mature, or if you like, maturity of the company. You can see on a revenue basis, the early stage has come down a bit, about 13%, and the other sectors are broadly similar. Just a word of a key point to note, though, that does include a number of legacy investments, so it doesn't necessarily show the full picture that I've described of a number of new companies coming into the portfolio. In terms of employees, broadly similar to last year. Next slide, please. Top three companies in the portfolio. We're always keeping an eye on the concentration of those top three. You would expect in a more traditional venture portfolio, and to where this company is moving, I think you will see greater concentration, because a key part of delivering strong venture capital returns is that when you back the strong companies, often known as the outliers, it's important that you continue to invest and stay invested in them, so that you fully benefit from their growth. So as time at the moment, we've still got two of the sort of non-new investment strategy investments in here. So one is our hydropower scheme in Scotland, and then our school that you'll be familiar with down in Seven Lakes, Radnor. So we've got one sort of tech company in the top three now, which is Selden, which helps enterprises who are using machine learning models, and then it helps them manage those models, keep them up to date in a far more effective and therefore cost-effective way. So if you look at our top three, that's now 10 million of current book value against a cost of just under 7 million. Next slide, please. Picking up a few of the new investments. There were quite a number in the year. We've got Peppy, which is all about providing as an employee benefit support around sort of underserved healthcare areas, and a good example of that is menopause. And this is now we were backing this business to expand into the US, which they're busy doing, and increasingly they're now providing critical support to employees, both in the UK and US, and increasingly elsewhere across the globe. Tokyo is investing in is an investment behind software which allows typically non-financial institutions to launch financial products. So imagine a company deciding they want to have a branded credit card, might be an example, and it's effectively allowing software just to be picked up and these financial products to be launched very quickly and brought to market very rapidly. Big data is supporting large pharma in their sales activities, and then CS Genetics is more in more heading towards life sciences sort of element, but it's around single cell sequencing. And then finally, Ophelos is a company which helps companies with large consumer debt books manage those debtors that are struggling to pay that. Obviously very relevant in today's world of higher cost of living. New slide, please. Next slide, even. This is Peppy. I've probably covered this, but just to give you a bit more on that. The actual total investment across the Albion stable VCs was 8 million. So this was a larger investment to reflect that this was a more mature business than typical. So it's what's known as a Series B investment. And then the share of this VCT was 1.2 million. And then the next slide is on Tokyo, which we've talked about. And similarly, that was a 7.4 million pound investment across the stable, of which 0.8 million was this fund in particular. Next slide, please. Follow-ons, absolutely core to our strategy, is that we back companies early and then we further invest as those companies grow, as we gain more confidence in their ongoing success and the effectiveness of their business model. So Helios, you'll be familiar with, is treating looking after the mental health of young people. Gravity is managing APIs for corporate. So this is the what links various bits of software together, and that's so critical to modern software infrastructure. Runa is about digital rewards, gift cards, and the alike, sort of moving away from physical gift cards to an environment where everything is done digitally, and again, very much in line. And then Speechmatics, who have some very effective and accurate technology to allow speech to be accurately transcribed, for example, in call centers would be one example of where it's used. Next slide, please. So just reminding you all of what we do. It's very much investing early, but being able to do, so that's what we call seed, but still being able to, on occasion, do investments like Peppy, which was at Series B. But what we're doing is we're looking for those long-term trends, and specifically business to business, so selling to enterprises, and that's intentional to avoid exposure to consumer spend. But this is all targeted in those core B2B software and healthcare being the key areas in which we are seeking to build the portfolio going forward. Next slide, please. ESG continues to be important. It's an area that we discuss at board meetings, and this is sort of looking at both the activities of Albion, but also the activities of our portfolio companies of this fund. And it's really acknowledging that companies that have a long-term commitment to sustainability and their impact on the world will in turn deliver better investment performance over time. And we do that by ensuring that there is an ESG lens throughout our investment process, but also that we then work with our companies in implementing ESG, and ensuring that we can have a portfolio that we are proud of their social impact. And if we to go to the next slide, we've picked up some of the areas that we've been working on here at Albion. So we ourselves are looking to be net zero by 2030, but we are purchasing carbon removal permits in the meantime. And one area where you as shareholders are going to be able to help us is we're very keen to see communications with shareholders move electronically. So reducing the impact of large quantities of paper and annual reports being moved around the world. So you'll see more progress on moving to electronic communications over the coming months. We within Albion are doing what we can to increase the diversity and inclusion of the venture capital sector, opening it as a career to those who might previously not have considered it. We had a very successful session here at Albion just a few weeks ago where we brought in a number of school students who came from non-traditional VC backgrounds, and we were able to talk to them about a career in venture capital, talk about what we do here at Albion. And it's very much in the hope that these people will consider venture capital as they go off to university, and there was some there was a great team that came to see us, and really impressive how committed they were, particularly to their forthcoming university degree courses. And then more on the sort of investee company side of things, we've launched the Radio Accelerator, which is very much focused at how do we back more investments that are founded by women. The amount of capital invested by the venture capital industry into female founded or even led businesses is too low. So we're trying to create and do our bit, and there are lots of other people doing this too. So we're not alone in the ambition, but we're trying to create a program where we can support those women founders as they build their businesses. We continue to sign up to the UNPRI and looking to improve our score there over the time. And then we've also completed a report our initial, an early report into how our portfolio companies are doing against our ESG ambitions. So lots going on, lots more data to collect, lots more progress needed, but we'll continue to work hard at it and report back this time next year. Moving to the next slide. You know, when we sort of think about prospects, you know, we have to be cognizant that the world we live in is continuing to be tricky, but the opportunity still is very much in venture capital. Venture capital is about backing and identifying the big technology and healthcare trends. To a certain extent, we want to avoid being too caught up in the noise of short term, and very much look at, are we backing companies that will become, you know, market leading? Are we backing products and services that will provide resilient growth through being absolutely critical, mission critical even to the customers? Discretionary consumer facing businesses, we largely stay away from that. It's our strategy to avoid being too overly exposed when you do have economic downturns as we are currently facing and may well continue to face for a bit. But importantly, we have the cash on the balance sheet at a time when having cash is valuable, both to support our investment companies, but also to back the companies that are coming through. And there is plenty of evidence from previous economic downturns that many of the new exciting technology companies get founded, for example, by people who might leave from some of the larger corporates downsizing their workforce. So lots to be positive about in terms of the mid to longer term, but just being realistic about the immediate outlook. And then if we go to the next slide, what does that look like in terms of the first quarter? And what we saw have seen in the first quarter was a small decrease of NAV of about 0.9%, which I think is in line with that sort of prospects that I just described. So the NAV is sitting at 50.42p, and the board has declared the first dividend of 1.27p payable at the end of July. Again, that being 2.5% of NAV. Virtual AGMs, well, this hopefully is now becoming a well-trodden and well-tried means of communicating. We do find we get very good engagement with shareholders, lots of people dialing in, but also lots of people then access these AGM presentations when they go up on our website. But the board and Albion are very conscious of the value of face-to-face interaction with our shareholders. And in that vein, could I commend the shareholder seminar to you, which is our get-together on the 15th of November at the Royal College of Surgeons, where we bring together shareholders, some investee companies, and other speakers. And we have a couple of breakouts where we're going to look at particular investment themes. And I will also do a sort of end of term report on the combined Albion VCT portfolio. So please sign up, info@albion.capital. Places are limited, so if I could encourage people to sign up sooner rather than later. It's a big venue, but I am expecting it to be quite popular. And in that vein, if you are signed up and you find that you are unable to come, it would be greatly appreciated if you could let us know so that we can make your space available to those that are likely to end up, if they've left it too late, to be on the waiting list. So hopefully I'll see lots of you there. I much look forward to it. It was a great event last year in its new enlarged format. So sign up. And on that note, I'm going to hand back to Richard, who's going to run the Q&A session for us. Richard.
Well, thank you very much, Will. Very interesting, as you describe it, challenging, but I think we remain optimistic, and certainly we, the board, recognise that there's a very strong team at Albion who are working to develop our fund for us. So if I can move now to questions that we've already received. There's a couple, actually, which Will has more or less answered. The first one I've got here is, why is the AGM virtual and not in person? And I think everybody's aware that we sort of got overtaken by events when the pandemic came. We were forced to go virtual and actually discover that in so doing, especially since we've moved to the Lumi platform, we've got a much more successful way of engaging with shareholders. we've really had overwhelmingly positive feedback from everyone about this. And interestingly, one of our fellow funds, Albion Tech and Gen, tried a hybrid AGM last year, virtual and physical. And I think only 5 people turned up to the physical AGM. So I think we are now very committed to that. But as Will says, we have got this shareholder conference and the shareholder seminar coming up, and that is very important. And anyone who was there last year, and it was very well attended, will know how interesting and enjoyable it was. So very much hope to endorse what Will said, that you will be able to, many of you will be able to come and join us there next time. In terms of other questions, we have had one which I think we get every year. So Will, what are your fundraising plans?
Right. Okay. So we are very much at that time of year where we are looking at what we might do in terms of fundraising. Just to remind everybody, and I did allude to this earlier, we very much look at what is the cash requirements of the fund. So we go through an exercise of considering and attempting to forecast what cash will be sensibly raised, sensibly deployed. So that's a process that we currently do. We'll be coming with recommendations because it is ultimately a board decision, but we'll be coming back with our recommendation to this board and indeed the other BCT boards in the coming weeks, with a view to recommend and agree a fundraising target. In terms of launch, that would suggest a launch as we come back from Christmas and New Year. So a January launch is our current expectation. Quantum as of yet undecided.
Very good. Thanks very much, Will. And one more question. It looks very likely that there's going to be a change of government. What is Albion's view of the impact of a change of government on our business here?
Well, I'm going to take that specifically around the VCT rather than the portfolio companies, I think, because that's probably, I suspect, what is behind that question. So obviously the change in government brings with it potential changes in policy. I suppose the one that's really most important to VCT is to understand what a potential new Labour government, obviously we don't know the outcome of the election, but we work with both sides of the political divide. We're extremely sort of plugged into a dialogue with the relevant stakeholders, both in Labour and Conservative Party, about how we as BCTs can help support their strategies around startup and early stage businesses, because ultimately with this VCT and other VCTs are here to provide funding to early stage companies, particularly innovative ones, who would otherwise find it difficult to raise capital. And in that vein, we've been having very productive, and I currently chair the Venture Capital Trust Association, so I have the privilege of representing the whole sector, all 6.3 billion of invested, or 90% of it anyway, invested. And in that vein, I've had conversations with both sides of political divide, parliamentarians and Treasury. And what I'm very encouraged by is that there is a common theme on both sides of the divide, that actually a very key component in driving economic growth, driving future tax revenues through increased tax take is to back early stage companies. And both Labour and Conservative are developing and are very supportive of that. And I very much have been making the case why VCTs should be part of that. So I think it's probably, in terms of government and or political support of early stage companies, I think has been as strong as I remember it during my time in VC and VCT specifically.
Very good. So watch this space. Well, that actually is all the questions that we've received for now. So I think we've come to the point where we can continue with the formal business of the AGM. The full texts of the resolutions were set out in the notice of the meeting, and the board is recommending members to vote in favour of all of the resolutions. So I'll briefly summarise them. The first resolution is to receive and adopt the company's accounts for the year ended 31st March 2023, together with the strategic report and the reports of the directors and auditor. The second resolution is to approve the directors' remuneration policy. The third resolution is to approve the directors' remuneration report for the year ended 31st of March 2023. The fourth resolution is my own re-election as a director of the company. The fifth resolution is the re-election of Anne Beresford as a director of the company. The sixth resolution is the re-election of Richard Wilson as a director of the company. The seventh resolution is the election of Nita Patel as a director of the company. The eighth resolution is the appointment of BDO LLP as auditor of the company to hold office from the conclusion of the meeting to the conclusion of the next meeting at which the accounts are to be laid. The ninth resolution is to authorise the directors to agree the auditor's remuneration. The 10th resolution is to allow the directors to allot shares. The penultimate resolution is a special resolution that gives the directors the power to disapply preemption rights. And the final resolution, which again is a special resolution, is to authorise the company to make one or more market purchases of ordinary shares in the capital of the company. Now, the results of the voting, including the proxy votes on each of the resolutions, will be announced after the AGM through a regulatory information service announcement. Additionally, the results will be published on Albion's website as soon as reasonably practical. I confirm the poll voting has now concluded, and I now declare the poll closed. In the meantime, you should now be able to see on screen the current proxy votes that have been received by the registrar. And as you'll note, the proxy votes are comfortably in favour of the proposed resolutions. So, thank you. That concludes the formal business of the AGM. I'd like to thank all members who've joined this AGM by webcast, and we do welcome any feedback you may have, which you can do by sending an email to aavcchair@Albion Capital. And for those of you who are interested in seeing a recording of the AGM, this will be available on the Albion Capital website in due course. So there being no other business, I confirm that the meeting is now closed, and I wish you a healthy and happy rest of the summer. And if you're watching today in temperatures like this, keep cool. So thank you all very much for attending.